The limousine pulled up to the towering glass building as cameras flashed wildly. David stepped out, his designer suit perfectly tailored, his smile practiced and empty. Another charity gala. Another night of fake smiles and emptier compliments. He was only 22, but he'd lived a lifetime of this hollow existence. "Mr. Harrison, over here," a reporter shouted. "Is it true you're the youngest billionaire in the state?" David waved politely, his jaw tight. Inside the glittering ballroom, he moved through the crowd like a ghost, nodding at business partners and society darlings, who saw nothing but dollar signs when they looked at him. Two women in expensive gowns giggled behind their champagne glasses as he passed. "That's David Harrison," one whispered loud enough for him to hear. "My friend dated him last year. Said he was boring, but who cares with that bank account?" The other laughed. "I'd pretend to love him for a year if it meant never working again." David's stomach twisted. He excused himself and found his way to the balcony, the cold night air hitting his face like a slap of reality. His butler and closest confidant, James, appeared beside him moments later. "Rough night, sir?" James asked gently. "They're all rough," David muttered, gripping the railing. "James, I'm 22 years old, and I can't remember the last time someone looked at me and saw a person instead of a paycheck. Is this really all there is?" James was quiet for a moment. "Perhaps you're looking in the wrong places. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong skin." David turned to face him, his eyes bright with sudden determination. "I want to disappear, James. I want to know what it's like to be nobody, to find someone who doesn't know my last name or my net worth." "That's quite a dramatic plan, sir. Can you help me or not?" James studied him carefully, then nodded slowly. "I've been with your family for 30 years. If you're serious about this, I'll support you. But remember, the truth always comes out eventually." "I'm counting on it," David said. "But by then, I'll know who's real." 3 weeks later, David stood in front of a mirror, barely recognizing himself. Makeup artists had worked magic, adding prosthetic scars to his cheek, yellowing his teeth, giving him dark circles and an uneven complexion. His hair was cut poorly and left greasy. Thrift store clothes hung awkwardly on his frame. He looked, by conventional standards, ugly, perfect. James handed him a worn backpack. "You'll be Dave Collins, scholarship student. I've enrolled you at Riverside High under a false identity. Your father thinks you're on a business trip in Europe." "What about money?" "You'll get a small weekly allowance like any ordinary teenager. No credit cards, no connections. You'll be completely on your own." David smiled for the first time in weeks. "Thank you, James. I mean it. Don't thank me yet, sir." High school can be cruel. David had no idea how right James was until he walked through the doors of Riverside High the following Monday. The hallways were narrow and crowded, nothing like the private academies he'd attended. Students rushed past laughing and shoving, barely noticing him until he reached his locker. "Oh my God," a voice said behind him. "What is that?" David turned to see a girl in designer clothes, her perfect makeup and styled hair, marking her as someone from money. Her name was Lydia, he'd learned later, and her father owned a chain of car dealerships. She stood with 3 other girls, all staring at him with unconcealed disgust. "I'm Dave," he said, trying to smile. "I'm new." "No kidding," Lydia said, wrinkling her nose. "Did you lose a fight with a lawnmower?" "What happened to your face?" Her friends laughed. David felt heat creep up his neck, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Just transferring in. Can you tell me where room 204 is?" "Yeah, it's far away from us," one of the other girls said, and they walked off, still giggling. David found his first class and slid into a seat at the back. More stairs, more whispers. A boy in front of him turned around. "Dude, no offense, but did you check a mirror this morning?" "Every day," David replied evenly. The boy laughed. "You're funny at least. I'm Marcus." "Dave." They shook hands and David felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Then Lydia walked in. She took one look at David, whispered something to her friend, and they both burst into laughter. The teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, called for quiet, but the damage was done. David could feel eyes on him all through class, hear the whispered jokes. By lunch, he was exhausted from the constant scrutiny. The cafeteria was overwhelming. David grabbed a tray of food that looked nothing like the gourmet meals he was used to and searched for a place to sit. Every table he approached suddenly became full, students shifting to block empty seats. Sorry. Saved. Someone's sitting there. David's chest tightened. He was about to give up and eat in the bathroom when a quiet voice spoke up. You can sit here if you want. He turned to find a girl with warm brown eyes and paint-stained hands gesturing to the empty seat across from her. She wore simple clothes, no makeup, and her dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. She was reading a worn paperback and eating alone. You sure? David asked. Yeah, I'm Emma. Dave. He sat down gratefully. Thanks. Everyone else seems pretty determined to avoid me. Emma shrugged. People here can be shallow. Don't take it personally. Hard not to when they're laughing at my face. Your face is fine, Emma said simply, then went back to her book. David found himself smiling. Over the next few days, a pattern emerged. Emma became his anchor in the chaos of high school. She saved him a seat at lunch, helped him navigate the building, and defended him when Lydia's bullying escalated. Hey, Frankenstein, Lydia called out one day in the hallway. Did you know there's a mirror in the bathroom? You should check it out sometime. Her friends howled with laughter. David kept walking, but Emma stopped. That's mean, Lydia. Leave him alone. Lydia's perfectly manicured eyebrows rose. Oh, Emma's defending her boyfriend. That's so cute. Are you two going to have ugly babies together? You know what's really ugly? Emma said quietly. Being cruel for no reason. Come on, Dave. As they walked away, David asked, why do you do that? Stand up for me? It just makes them target you too. Emma was quiet for a moment. My dad died when I was 12. Before he passed, he told me that how we treat people when nobody's watching defines who we are. Lydia's got money and popularity, but she's empty inside. You're not, I can tell. Something shifted in David's chest. What do you want to do after high school? Art, Emma said, her face lighting up. I want to start a foundation that teaches art to underprivileged kids. Give them an outlet, something beautiful in hard lives. That's amazing. What about you? David hesitated. I'm not sure yet. Still figuring it out. Over the following weeks, they grew closer. Emma showed him her artwork, stunning pieces full of emotion and color. They talked about books and music, dreams and fears. David found himself forgetting about his real life, losing himself in these simple moments of genuine connection. One afternoon, they were walking through the park near school when Emma asked, Can I paint you? David froze. Me? Why? You have an interesting face. There's character there. Kindness. She smiled. Trust me? He nodded, too moved to speak. They sat on a bench while Emma sketched, her hands moving confidently across the page. Other students passed by, some pointing and laughing at the sight of them together. Doesn't it bother you? David asked. What they say? Emma looked up. Sometimes. But then I remember that their opinions don't define my worth. Neither should they define yours. That's when David knew he was in trouble. He was falling for her, really falling, in a way he never had before. But he was living a lie, and that lie was about to explode. The next day at school, David arrived to find students clustered around their phones, laughing and pointing at him. His stomach dropped. Dude, you're famous, Marcus said, shoving his phone in David's face. On the screen was a video titled, Ugly Boy Thinks He Has a Chance. It showed him and Emma in the park, her sketching while he smiled at her. The comments were brutal. He's delusional if he thinks she actually likes him. Someone tell him Beauty and the Beast isn't real life. Poor Emma probably feels sorry for him. David's hands shook. He looked up to see Lydia smirking from across the hall, her phone in her hand. She'd recorded them and posted it. The worst part came at lunch. Emma sat down across from him, but her eyes were red. Emma, I'm sorry, I didn't know she was filming us. It's not your fault, Emma said, but her voice was strained. But Dave, I need to ask you something. Can we not hang out for a while? Just until this blows over? David felt like he'd been punched. You're embarrassed to be seen with me. No, everyone's saying things and my art scholarship interview's coming up. And I can't afford any drama right now. She reached for his hand. Please understand. I do, David said quietly, pulling his hand back. I understand perfectly. He stood and walked away, leaving his lunch untouched. Emma called after him, but he didn't turn around. The irony wasn't lost on him. He disguised himself to find someone who could see past appearances, and in the end, even the kindest person cared what others thought. That night, David sat in his real bedroom in his family's mansion, staring at the ceiling. James knocked softly before entering. Bad day, sir. She asked me to stay away from her. Said people were talking. James sat in the chair by the window. And you're surprised? She's a teenage girl trying to survive high school. The social pressure must be immense. I thought she was different. She defended you many times, didn't she? Perhaps she is different, but she's also human. We all have our breaking points. What do I do now? The charity gala is next week. Your father's hosting it for the Children's Art Foundation. Apparently, they've selected several students to attend, including one Emma Rodriguez. David sat up. She'll see me. The real me. Yes. So the question is, what will you do with that moment? David thought about the pain in Emma's eyes when she'd asked him to stay away. The months of bullying he'd endured. Lydia's cruelty. Marcus's casual friendliness that disappeared when it became socially inconvenient. All of it had taught him something. That real character showed up in the margins, in the small moments when nobody was keeping score. I'm going to show her who I really am, David said, and then let her decide what to do with the truth. The week crawled by. David didn't return to Riverside High. He told James to withdraw Dave Collins for personal reasons. Let them think the ugly boy had been too embarrassed to show his face. The night of the charity gala arrived. David stood in his bedroom, wearing a custom tuxedo, his real face clean and handsome in the mirror. No prosthetics, no disguise, just him. You look terrified, James observed. I am. What if she hates me for lying? Then you'll know she wasn't the right person after all. But sir, I've watched you these past months. You've been more alive, more real than I've ever seen you. Whatever happens tonight, this experience has changed you. David nodded, straightening his bow tie. Let's go. The ballroom was packed with the city's elite. Photographers lined the entrance. Business leaders mingled with politicians. And in the corner, a small group of students stood awkwardly in their best clothes, clearly out of their element. David spotted Emma immediately. She wore a simple black dress, her hair down, looking beautiful and completely uncomfortable. His father was at the podium, giving his opening speech about the importance of supporting young artists. David waited in the wings, his heart hammering. And now, his father said, I'd like to introduce my son, David Harrison, who will be presenting the scholarships tonight. David walked onto the stage. The applause was immediate and overwhelming. He smiled, waved, then looked directly at the students' section. Emma's face went white. Her hand flew to her mouth. Thank you all for coming, David said into the microphone. Tonight, we celebrate the incredible talent of young artists who see beauty in the world and have the courage to share it with us. He descended from the stage and walked directly to Emma. The room fell silent, everyone watching. Up close, he could see tears forming in her eyes. Hi, Emma, he said softly. Dave. Her voice was barely a whisper. I don't understand. My name is David Harrison. The past 3 months, I was living as someone else because I was tired of people only seeing my money. I wanted to know what it felt like to be treated as just a person. Emma's lips parted in shock. The room around them was frozen. The crowd of billionaires, cameras, and waiters watching the scene unfold like a movie. You lied to me? She whispered, her voice trembling. Yes, David said, his voice low but steady. And I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to find one person who'd see me for who I am, not what I own. You were that person, Emma. You were the only one who didn't laugh, who saw something human in me when everyone else saw something ugly. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Everything I told you, all those things about honesty, about being real, and you were lying the whole time. I was lying about my name, he said, stepping closer. But not about how I felt. Every moment we spent together was real to me. You made me forget the world I came from. You made me believe I could be loved without the money, without the fame. You showed me something I've never had. Truth. Emma wiped at her eyes, torn between anger and disbelief. You made a fool of me in front of everyone. Do you know what that video did to me? People still whisper about it. And now this? David nodded. You're right. I hurt you and I can't undo that. But if you'll let me, I'll make it right. Not with money, not with apologies, but with honesty. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is the scholarship award letter. It's in your name. Not because of me, but because you earned it. Your art moved the foundation board so much they voted unanimously. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emma stared at the letter in disbelief. I don't understand. You deserve it, David said softly. You've been fighting for something pure and beautiful in a world that rewards cruelty. I wanted the whole world to see that. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then from the corner of the room, Lydia's voice cut through the air. How pathetic. He had to buy her love in the end. The crowd turned. Lydia stood there sneering, her phone held high, recording again. Guess you finally got what you wanted, Emma. Fame, money, and your little fairy tale ending. David turned toward her, his jaw tight. You know what, Lydia? You're right about one thing. This is a fairy tale. Because for once, the villain doesn't win. The audience murmured, whispers rising like a tide. Lydia's face flushed bright red as she turned to storm out, her friends scrambling after her. David turned back to Emma. You don't have to forgive me tonight. Maybe you never will. But I needed you to know that the boy you sat with at lunch, the one you stood up for when everyone else mocked him, that was the real me. The money doesn't change that. Emma looked down at the letter in her trembling hands. I don't care about your money, David. I don't know if I can trust you again. He nodded, pain flickering across his face. I'll wait, as long as it takes. He turned to leave, giving her space, but her voice stopped him. David, he turned back. Did you really mean it when you said everything we shared was real? With every heartbeat, he said simply. Emma stared at him for a moment longer, then took a deep breath and walked away toward the exit. Cameras flashed, whispers exploded, and David just stood there, alone again, but this time not empty. James approached quietly. That went better than it could have, sir. David managed a small, sad smile. It's not the ending I wanted, but maybe it's the one I needed. Perhaps. But something tells me that young woman isn't finished with your story yet. He was right. A week later, David was in his private studio, sketching ideas for a new youth arts center. The doorbell rang, and James appeared moments later with a knowing expression. You have a visitor. Emma stood in the doorway, holding a canvas against her chest. Her hair was pulled back, her expression nervous but determined. Hi, she said softly. Hi, David replied, his heart pounding. I didn't expect to see you. I almost didn't come, she admitted. But then I remembered what you said, that truth matters more than appearances. So, here I am. She handed him the canvas. This is for you. David turned it around slowly. It was a painting of two figures sitting on a park bench under the fading light of sunset. One was rough, scarred, and hunched slightly. The other warm and unafraid, her hand resting on his. The title written delicately at the bottom read, The Truth Beneath the Mask. It's beautiful, David whispered. You painted this? Emma smiled faintly. Yeah, it's what I saw when I looked at you. Not the disguise, not the billionaire. Just you. Their eyes met, and the silence between them was full of forgiveness, of recognition, of something fragile and real. I don't know what happens next, Emma said, but maybe we could start with coffee. No disguises, no lies. David laughed softly, the tension in his chest finally easing. I'd like that very much. They walked toward the garden together, the air light and sweet with the scent of roses. James watched from the doorway, a smile tugging at his lips. Seems the truth did set him free after all, he murmured to himself. Sometimes it takes losing everything, your name, your pride, your masks, to find the one person who sees you for who you really are. Because in a world obsessed with beauty and wealth, the rarest thing of all is truth. If you love this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below with your favorite moment from David and Emma's journey. Your support keeps stories like this alive.